why specifically, or at least in your understanding, does Peter refer to Jesus as a servant? That's a really important word and not used accidentally.
Yeah, I just think that he is, the term is applied to all of God's, major players and people, Moses, my servant Moses, and so forth. But I just think in this context, the Isaianic servant is probably the best candidate for it. And especially, it just fits the overall context when he says, to you first. And even the whole movement of the book, of Acts, beginning with the Jew in Jerusalem and then extending into the Gentile world, which is how the book of Acts flows out, right? And with a lot of Gentile conversions. So I think that the Isaianic servant is the best. And when you think about, you don't just think of Isaiah 53. Most of us are familiar with that passage, speaking of Jesus' death, his crucifixion, and how he brings about justification for the many, right? He sees his offspring as a result of his anguish. But a lot of people don't look at the rest of the Isaianic servant songs that are there's 4 of them altogether that are all throughout, beginning with Isaiah 40, 42, 49, 50, and then of course closing with 52 and 53. So this idea of an ancient Near Eastern understanding of this servant term is a trusted representative. So it's God's trusted representative. And so here we have him in chapter 42 of Isaiah, bringing justice to the world, true justice. You have that theme earlier also in Isaiah 9 and 11. So I do believe Dr. Oswald and others have done work in this, showing that the servant, Dr. Alexander has too, the Messianic king depicted in chapters 9 and 11 of Isaiah, also same words are used for the servant. So there's also, even within the book of Isaiah, a hint that this coming Messiah, this stump of Jesse, root of Jesse, will actually be one who comes to suffer. But I think one of my favorites in the servant songs would be, I think it's in 49. I have it written down here. So God raises him up to regather the lost tribes of Israel. Well, or the scattered tribes. Mm-hmm. Why are they scattered? Well, the northern kingdom, right? Were taken over by the Assyrians because of disobedience, and then the southern kingdom by the Babylonians. And so everybody went into exile. The northern kingdom was probably assimilated to some degree, and Judah, southern kingdom, retained to some degree. But nonetheless, even returning to the land, they still hadn't returned to the glory days of, a united kingdom under a messianic leader or under kingship. And so they were waiting for that period of time. So part of the servant's work is to go and recollect them, to restore Israel and Judah, the brothers, to come together again. And then you hear a sweet thing with God saying through the prophet, it's too small of a thing that I raise you up just to do that. I'm also going to make you a light to the nation, so that my salvation may go forth to the ends of the earth. And so the servant has a mission. It's more than just to restore the lost tribes of Israel, to regather them back to God,
right?
But also to gather in the nations. And even that's not a new idea. You see that way back in Genesis, where with the calling of Abraham, I will make you a father of a multitude, not just his own offspring, but also offspring that will come under the benefit of Abraham, the blessing to the nations. So but it's through the servant's work. So there's progression here as we see this. And I believe that's what Peter's referring to, this precious servant. For you first, God raised up his servant to you, Israel, and sent him to bless you by turning every one of you from your wicked ways. So the servant has been given for their justification, and they need to repent. That's his gift, to turn them from that and return to God. So I think that the Isaianic service, particularly chapter 49, would be the one in view, as well as, of course, 53. All the servant songs are beautiful. He's the suffering servant, gives his his beard to be plucked out. He suffers shame and humiliation. He is so gentle. A smoldering wick he would never snuff out, meaning he deals very gently with the people, which is a complete picture of Jesus. Come to me, all you are weary and find life burdensome, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy, and you will find rest for your soul. So, it's just a beautiful characterization of kind of a sketch of Jesus, of his person and work.
Yeah.
So line from Isaiah.